when billionaire Vaughn Thorne drew a thick, aggressive zero on the tip line after an hour of public humiliation, Nia Thompson wanted to scream. The entire Golden Oak Diner watched in silence as he stood up, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked out like she was nothing. Her hands trembled as she stared at that zero black ink carved into the receipt like a verdict. $200 for the meal, $0 for her dignity. But when she lifted his plate to clear the table, her fingers brushed against something hidden beneath the rim. A hand-folded yellow note, a security badge with her photograph already printed on it. The note said 5 words that made her heart stop. "Bring your brother. Time's running out." She didn't know that following those instructions would reveal the truth about her father's bankruptcy, her brother's miracle cure, and why this dying billionaire had been watching her family for 30 years. Have you ever been judged by someone who didn't know your story? Maybe you've been on the other side, judging someone before you knew the truth. Drop a comment and tell me about a time you misjudged someone, or someone misjudged you. Because what Nia was about to discover would make her question every assumption she'd ever made about people, about cruelty, and about the man who had just walked out that door. Welcome to the channel. Please do well to support by liking and subscribing, and comment where you're watching from. See you at the end of the video. God bless you. 3 weeks earlier, Nia had been counting her tips in the back room of the Golden Oak Diner when the numbers stopped making sense. $47 short. Again. Her younger brother Marcus needed his medication refilled by Friday, and it was already Wednesday. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. "Steel doesn't break," her mother used to say. "Steel bends, but it doesn't shatter." Nia had been bending for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The diner's kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and cheap fryer oil. Somewhere in the dining room, a customer was complaining about cold eggs. Nia could hear plates clattering, the cash register dinging, the endless hum of survival. She straightened her apron, checked her reflection in the cracked mirror hanging by the supply closet. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back so tight it gave her headaches. At 28, she looked 40. Her manager, Dave, poked his head through the doorway. Short guy, balding, always sweating even in winter. He looked nervous. "Nia, we got a VIP coming in today. Specifically requested you by name." She frowned. "Requested me? I don't know any VIPs." "Yeah, well, he knows you." Dave wiped his forehead with a dish rag. "Says he heard you're the best server we got." "Corporate level stuff, Nia." "Don't mess this up. We can't afford to lose his business." "Who is he?" Dave's face went pale. "Vaughn Thorne." The name hit her like cold water. Everyone in Pennsylvania knew that name. Vaughn Thorne, the corporate executioner. The billionaire who dismantled Kellerman Industries overnight, putting 5,000 people out of work. The man who bought struggling companies just to strip them for parts. If Thorne wanted something from the Golden Oak Diner, it wasn't food. Why would someone like that come here? Nia's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Hell if I know." Dave shrugged. "But he's coming at 2 o'clock, and he asked for you. So smile pretty and don't ask questions." Nia returned to the dining room floor, her stomach twisting. 2 o'clock was in 15 minutes. She checked her section, made sure the tables were clean, the salt shakers filled. Mrs. Chen sat in her usual booth by the window, reading the newspaper. Old Mr. Harris was nursing his 3rd cup of coffee. Normal people, regular people, people who tipped $3 on a $10 check and said, "Thank you." At exactly 2 o'clock, the front door opened. The diner went quiet. Not silent, but muted, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Conversations dropped to whispers. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even the jukebox seemed to lower its voice. Vaughn Thorne didn't walk into the Golden Oak Diner. He arrived. Like weather. Like a shift in air pressure that made your ears pop. He wore a gray suit so sharp it could have been tailored from knife blades. His shoes gleamed. His tie was the color of money. dark green with a pattern so subtle it might have been imagined. But it was his face that stopped her. Not handsome, not ugly, just cold. Eyes like a wolf watching a sheepfold, calculating which animal would break first. He scanned the diner with the precision of someone appraising property. His gaze landed on Naya and stayed there. She felt pinned, a butterfly under glass. He moved toward the center booth, the one with the red vinyl seat that faced the entire restaurant, sat down without waiting to be greeted. Folded his hands on the table and watched her. Nia grabbed a menu and a glass of water, forced her legs to move. Her heart hammered. This wasn't a customer. This was a predator. "Good afternoon," she said, setting the water down. Her voice stayed steady. "Good. My name is Nia, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with, I've been watching you, Nia." His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. "Your reputation precedes you. Let's see if it's accurate." She blinked. "I'm sorry, what reputation?" He picked up the menu without looking at it, eyes still locked on hers. "I'm going to be here for a while. I hope you can handle pressure because I don't accept mediocrity." Behind her, Nia heard Mrs. Chen whisper to her husband. Heard someone's chair scrape against the floor. The entire diner was watching. Waiting. She swallowed hard, pen poised over her notepad. "What can I get for you, sir?" "Coffee, black, not from the bottom of the pot. Fresh." She nodded and walked to the kitchen, legs shaking. Dave was already pouring a new pot, hands moving fast. "What did he say?" "He said he's been watching me." Nia's voice cracked. "What does that mean? Why would he watch me?" "Just serve him and keep your mouth shut." Dave shoved the coffee pot at her. Don't give him any reason to complain. She poured the coffee into a ceramic mug, carried it back to Thorne's table. Set it down gently. He lifted the mug to his lips, took one sip, and set it back down. 2 degrees too cold. His face didn't change. "Remake it." Nia stared at him. 2 degrees. He couldn't possibly know that, but his eyes challenged her to argue. She picked up the mug, walked back to the kitchen, dumped it out. Dave was already heating a fresh pot on the burner. "What now?" "He says it's too cold." "It's fresh." "He says 2 degrees too cold." Dave cursed under his breath, cranked up the heat. Nia waited, counting the seconds. 30, 40, 50. When she poured the coffee this time, steam rose from the surface. She brought it back to Thorne, set it down without a word. He tasted it. 1 degree too hot now, again. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't about coffee. This was about power, about proving he could make her dance. She took the mug again, walked back to the kitchen. This time she let it sit for exactly 15 seconds before bringing it back. Thorne sipped it, nodded once. "Acceptable." "Barely." Nia's hands wanted to shake. She wouldn't let them. "Are you ready to order?" "Steak, medium rare. Exactly 135 degrees internal temperature. If it's 1 degree over or under, I'm sending it back." She wrote it down, passed the order to the kitchen. The cook, a big guy named Terrence, who'd worked at the diner for 15 years, read the ticket and laughed. Is this guy serious? Dead serious. Nobody measures steak temperature to the degree. That's insane. Can you do it or not? Terrence muttered something under his breath, but he pulled out a meat thermometer and got to work. Nia returned to the floor, checked on her other tables. Everyone was stealing glances at Thorne. Mrs. Chen leaned across the booth and whispered, "That's the man who destroyed Kellerman Industries. My nephew lost his job because of him. 3 kids and a mortgage, and that man didn't blink." "I know," Nia said quietly. "Be careful, honey. Men like that don't come to places like this for the food." 15 minutes later, Terrence called her back. The steak sat on the plate, perfectly seared, steam rising from the surface. 135 degrees exactly. I checked it 3 times. If he complains, he's lying. Nia brought the plate out, set it in front of Thorne. He cut into the center with surgical precision, examined the pink flesh like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. Chewed slowly, swallowed, set down his fork. 3 degrees over. Send it back. Heat flashed through her chest. Sir, the cook measured it. It's exactly 135 degrees. Thorne's eyes went flat. Are you arguing with me? I'm just letting you know. I know what temperature I ordered. This isn't it. Send it back, or I'll speak to your manager about your inability to follow simple instructions. Nia's throat burned. She picked up the plate, walked back to the kitchen. Terrence saw her face and slammed his spatula on the counter. No way, that steak was perfect. He's messing with you. I know. You want me to spit in his food? No. She met his eyes. Just make another one, please. Nia. Please, Terrence, I need this job. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, okay, but this guy's a real piece of work. While she waited for the second steak, Thorne called her over. There's a crumb on this table, clean it. She looked, saw a speck so small it could have been a grain of salt. Pulled a towel from her apron and wiped it away. Thorne watched her with the focus of someone conducting an experiment. When she finished, he ran his finger across the surface, inspecting for residue. Acceptable. The second steak came out. Nia delivered it without comment. Thorne cut into it, examined it, took a bite. This time he ate in silence. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Stand right there. She froze. His phone rang. He answered it, holding up one finger to Nia. Don't move. For 5 full minutes, Vaughn Thorne discussed stock prices and quarterly reports while Nia stood beside his table, holding an empty tray. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. Other customers stared at her with pity, and that made it worse. She wasn't just serving him. She was being displayed, a trained animal performing tricks. And when he finally hung up, he didn't apologize. Didn't acknowledge her at all, just cut another piece of steak and chewed. You're slouching, he said without looking up. Stand up straight. Presentation matters. Nia straightened her spine. You sound tired. Smile more. I'm paying for an experience. She forced her mouth into a smile. The way you're holding that tray is unprofessional. Hold it higher, like you care. She adjusted the tray, lifting it to shoulder height. Her arms trembled from the weight of nothing. This went on for an hour. Every few minutes, Thorne found something new to criticize. Her posture, her tone, the angle of the silverware she'd placed on the table. Each complaint was delivered in the same calm, clinical voice, like he was grading a performance. And maybe he was. Maybe this was all just a game to him, a way to pass the time before his next corporate execution. By the time he finished eating, Nia's jaw ached from forced smiles. Her hands shook. She'd never wanted to scream at someone so badly in her life. But she didn't. She served him with a level of grace that made his cruelty look small, and she could see it frustrated him. He wanted her to break, to snap, to prove she was just like everyone else. But Nia Thompson was made of steel. Finally, after 73 minutes of psychological warfare, Thorne set down his fork and patted his mouth with a napkin. The diner held its breath. He reached for his leather wallet, pulled it out with the slow deliberation of a magician about to perform a trick. The bill sat on the table between them. $200 exactly. A number that felt intentional, symbolic. Thorne opened his wallet and pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills. He laid them on the table with theatrical precision, smoothing them flat. Every eye in the diner was on him now. Even the jukebox seemed to quiet. He picked up his pen, made direct eye contact with Nia, and drew a thick, aggressive 0 on the tip line. The sound of the pen scratching paper echoed like nails on a chalkboard. He capped the pen. Stood. Adjusted his cufflinks with a smirk that felt like a slap across her face. And without another word, Vaughn Thorne walked out of the Golden Oak Diner. The silence that followed was suffocating. Naya stood frozen, the receipt in her hand, feeling every pair of eyes on her. Mrs. Chen's husband muttered something she couldn't hear. Someone coughed. Silverware clinked against plates. Life resumed, but slower, heavier, like the air itself had thickened with shame. Dave appeared at her elbow, placed a hand on her shoulder. Some people are born without souls, Nia. Clean it up and move on. Don't let him get to you. Her coworker Sarah squeezed her arm. You handled that better than anyone could have. He's just a monster. You're better than him. But the words didn't help. Nia felt the burn of humiliation spreading through her chest, hot and acidic. She'd served him with dignity, and he'd tipped her 0. Not because the service was bad, because he could. Because cruelty was a hobby for men with too much money and not enough humanity. She approached the table alone, legs shaking. Reached for the white ceramic plate to clear the debris of his meal. Her hand trembled as she lifted it, and that's when she felt the resistance. Something tucked into the circular rim beneath the plate, hidden from view. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She palmed it quickly, glancing around to make sure no one noticed. Then she walked straight to the bathroom, locked the door behind her, and unfolded the yellow note with shaking hands. The handwriting was jagged, urgent, like it had been written in a hurry. The world thinks I am a monster because I value efficiency over emotion. They are wrong. I value steel. You didn't break when I tried to crush you. Most people serve for the tip. You serve because it is who you are. Now go to the address on the back of this badge. Bring your brother. Time is running out. Nia stared at the security badge. Her photograph was already printed on it, laminated and official. High-level clearance for Thorne Medical Research Facility. Her hands shook so hard the badge slipped through her fingers, clattered against the tile floor. She picked it up, read the note again. Bring your brother. How did Thorne know about Marcus? How long had he been watching her family? Her reflection stared back at her from the bathroom mirror. Exhausted, humiliated, but unbroken. Steel doesn't break, her mother had said. And maybe that's exactly what Thorne had been testing, but why? That night, Nia sat in the passenger seat of her mother's old Honda, the yellow note clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Marcus sat in the back, his fingers drumming nervously against his thigh. The tremors had gotten worse over the past month. Sometimes his whole hand shook so violently he couldn't hold a fork. The doctors said experimental treatments existed, but insurance wouldn't cover them. Cost more than their house was worth. More than Nia would make in 5 years of serving coffee and swallowing her pride. Are you sure about this? Marcus's voice cracked. He was only 22, but the disease made him look fragile, breakable. What if it's some kind of trap? Nia didn't answer because she didn't have an answer. Every rational part of her brain screamed danger. Billionaires didn't leave secret notes for waitresses. They didn't know about sick brothers or hand out security badges with your photo already printed on them. This was either a miracle or a nightmare, and she wouldn't know which until she walked through those doors. The Thorne Medical Research Facility sat on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by empty fields and darkness. The building rose from the ground like a fortress, all glass and steel and sharp edges that caught the moonlight. Lights glowed from behind tinted windows. Security cameras tracked their approach. This wasn't a hospital. This was a bunker for secrets. Nia parked in the visitor lot, engine ticking as it cooled. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. We can still turn around. Marcus leaned forward between the seats. No, we can't. You know we can't. He was right. They'd come too far, hoped too hard, needed too desperately. Nia grabbed the security badge and stepped out of the car. The night air bit at her skin, cold enough to see her breath. Marcus climbed out slowly, his legs unsteady. She took his arm, steadied him, and together they walked toward the entrance. The glass doors slid open before Nia could reach for them. Motion sensors. The lobby beyond was sterile white, lit by fluorescent lights that made everything look surgical. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, mixed with something else. Money? The kind of money that could buy silence, erase mistakes, rewrite history. And then Nia saw them. 3 other people sat in the waiting area, scattered across expensive leather chairs like survivors of a shipwreck. A middle-aged man in a construction vest, hands calloused and rough. A young woman who couldn't have been older than 23, wearing a fast food uniform with grease stains on the sleeve. An elderly man in a postal worker's jacket, his face lined with decades of hard labor. They all turned to look at Nia and Marcus. And in their hands, each one held a yellow note identical to hers. The construction worker stood up first, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "You got one too?" His voice carried an edge of desperation. "From Thorn?" Nia nodded slowly, her stomach dropping. She wasn't special, wasn't chosen. She was just one name on a list, one test subject in whatever sick experiment this billionaire was running. The young woman in the fast food uniform laughed, but it sounded broken. "I thought I was the only one. Thought he saw something in me." She crumpled her note in her fist. "But we're all here. How many others are there? 10? 20? Maybe it's a scam." The elderly postal worker's voice shook. "Maybe he gets off on watching poor people scramble for scraps." The construction worker's jaw tightened. "Or maybe it's real, and only one of us gets whatever he's offering. Maybe we're competing." Tension crackled through the lobby like static electricity. Nia felt Marcus's grip tighten on her arm. These weren't allies, they were rivals. Strangers who'd all endured the same humiliation, all followed the same cryptic instructions, all showed up hoping for salvation. And now they eyed each other like wolves circling the same piece of meat. Before anyone could speak again, a door at the back of the lobby opened. A nurse emerged, clipboard in hand, her expression professionally neutral. She wore scrubs so white they almost glowed under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes scanned the group, then landed on Nia with laser focus. "Nia Thompson?" Nia's throat went dry. She raised her hand like a student called to the principal's office. "Come with me, please. Room 847. He's been waiting for you." The other 3 people stared at her. The young woman's face twisted with something between envy and rage. The construction worker's hands clenched into fists. The elderly postal worker just looked confused, lost, like he'd been promised something and now watched it slip away. "Why her?" The construction worker's voice cut through the silence. "Why does she get called first?" The nurse didn't answer, just held the door open, waiting. Nia glanced back at Marcus, who nodded once. They followed the nurse into a hallway so white it hurt to look at. Their footsteps echoed off tile floors. The air smelled like chemicals and secrets. Every few feet, another door. Another room full of equipment Nia couldn't name. Scientists in lab coats glanced up as they passed, their expressions unreadable. The nurse stopped at a security checkpoint. Nia waved her badge across the scanner. It beeped green. The door unlocked with a heavy click. They descended deeper into the building, past more doors, more checkpoints, each one opening automatically for Nia's badge like she'd been expected all along. Like this path had been prepared specifically for her. "How much further?" Marcus whispered. "Not far," the nurse said without turning around. They reached an elevator, rode it up to the 8th floor in silence. When the doors opened, the hallway was different. Quieter. Darker. Only a few lights remained on, casting long shadows across the floor. The nurse led them to the end of the corridor, to a heavy door marked 847. Through the small window, Nia could see medical equipment. Monitors, IV lines, and a hospital bed. In that bed, connected to machines that beeped softly in the darkness, lay Vaughn Thorne. Not in his sharp gray suit, not with his predatory eyes and calculated cruelty. He wore a thin hospital gown that made him look small, human, mortal. His skin was pale, almost gray. His breathing was shallow. The monitors tracked his heart rate, his blood pressure, the slow countdown of a life running out of time. Marcus grabbed Nia's arm. That's him? The man from the diner? The nurse opened the door. You have 15 minutes. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. If there's something he needs to tell you, it has to be now. Nia's legs wouldn't move. This had to be a trap, a trick, some elaborate game where the punchline ended with her humiliation. But the nurse was already walking away, her footsteps fading down the corridor, leaving Nia and Marcus alone with the man who'd spent an hour trying to break her spirit over a cup of coffee. Nia stepped inside. The door closed behind them with a soft click that felt final, like the ceiling of a tomb. She moved closer to the bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Thorne's eyes were closed. For a moment, she thought he might already be dead. Then his eyelids fluttered open, and those cold, calculating eyes found hers in the darkness. His voice came out weak, barely more than a whisper, but every word was clear. Thank you for passing the test, Nia. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to demand answers, explanations, apologies for the hour of torture he'd put her through. But the words caught in her throat when he said the next sentence. Now, let me tell you why I destroyed your father. Please support my channel by subscribing, sharing, and liking, and where you are watching from. Thank you for reaching this far. It means a lot. Nia's hands curled into fists. The machines beeped steadily in the background, counting down the seconds of Vaughn Thorne's life. Marcus moved closer to her side, his trembling hand finding her arm. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in, the air too thick to breathe properly. You want to talk about my father? Nia's voice came out sharper than she intended. You ruined us. You took everything. My mother got sick from the stress. We lived in a car for 6 months. I was 8 years old, and I watched my father cry himself to sleep because a man in a suit decided our family wasn't worth saving. Thorne's eyes didn't waver. Your father was part of a $4.7 million embezzlement scheme. The words landed like a physical blow. Nia stepped back, shaking her head. That's a lie. I wish it was. Thorne reached for a folder on the table beside his bed, his movements slow and painful. He pulled out documents, yellowed with age, and spread them across the thin hospital blanket. Financial records, wire transfers, FBI investigation files, her father's signature on dozens of pages. Thompson Construction wasn't just failing, Thorne continued, his voice growing weaker with each word. Your father and his partner were stealing from worker pension funds, millions of dollars meant for families who'd spent their lives building this city. The federal prosecutors had enough evidence to put him away for life. Nia's vision blurred. She grabbed the edge of the bed to steady herself. No, he told us you were the monster. He said you destroyed his company out of greed. He needed someone to blame. Thorne coughed, and the monitors beside him beeped faster. It was easier for him to hate me than face what he'd done, so I let him hate me. I gave him that gift. Gift? Nia's voice cracked. You call destroying our lives a gift? I call keeping him out of federal prison a gift. Thorne's eyes blazed with something that looked almost like anger. The prosecutors wanted to make an example of him, wanted to show that white-collar crime had consequences. Your father would have died in prison, Nia, and your family would have died with him, marked by his crimes, carrying his shame for the rest of your lives. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice barely audible. So what did you do? Thorne's gaze shifted to him. I bought the company, paid twice what it was worth. Then I bankrupted it in 48 hours before the feds could file charges. Made it look like a hostile takeover, a billionaire's power play. The criminal investigation got buried under corporate restructuring paperwork. Your father walked away, broke but free. The room spun. Nia pressed her palm against her forehead, trying to process what she was hearing. 30 years of believing one story, one truth, one villain. And now this dying man was telling her everything she knew was backwards. For 30 years, Thorne continued, I monitored your family from a distance. Anonymous donations when your mother got sick. Tuition assistance when you wanted to go to college but couldn't afford it. Job referrals. Small helps that couldn't be traced back to me. He paused, breathing heavily. When I found out about Marcus's condition 2 years ago, I knew it was time. Time to stop hiding. Time to give back what I'd taken. You didn't take anything, Nia whispered. You saved us. I took your childhood. I took your father's dignity. I took your family's stability. Thorne's voice broke. Saving someone doesn't erase the cost of the rescue. I've lived 30 years as the villain in your family's story, so your father wouldn't have to be the villain in his own. But I'm dying now, and I don't have time for secrets anymore. He gestured to more documents on the table. Legal papers. Medical research files. Financial statements showing millions of dollars allocated to a single purpose. I spent the last 3 years building a research program for Marcus's exact neurological disorder. It's experimental, cutting edge, and it works. Thorne's eyes locked on Marcus. Your treatment starts tomorrow morning, fully funded. No cost to your family? Ever. Marcus's legs gave out. He sank into the chair beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. Why? Why would you do this for us? Because I'm not a good man. Thorne's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've destroyed companies, ended careers, made enemies of everyone I ever met. I valued efficiency over humanity, and I justified it by telling myself the strong survive and the weak deserve what they get. But then I got sick, and I realized something. He looked at Nia. Money can't buy character. Power can't create integrity. I could pay for your brother's cure, but I couldn't buy someone to run my foundation after I'm gone. Someone who would use my money the way it should be used. To find people with steel. Nia's throat tightened. Steel. I tested dozens of people over the past 2 years. Put them under pressure. Pushed them to their breaking point. Most of them cracked. They cursed me out. Quit mid-shift. One tried to blackmail me for more money. Thorne's eyes never left hers. But you? You served me with grace when I gave you every reason to hate me. You bent, but you didn't break. That's steel, Nia. That's what I've been searching for. The machines beside his bed started beeping faster. A warning. Time running out. The foundation isn't just about medical research, Thorne said, his words coming in shorter bursts now. It's about finding people like you. People who maintain their dignity when the world treats them like they're worthless. People who do the right thing even when no one's watching. Even when it costs them everything. He pushed a final document toward her. You'll run it. You'll decide who gets funding, who gets second chances, who deserves to be seen. Nia picked up the document with shaking hands. Her name was already printed on it. Director of the Thorne Foundation. Salary that made her dizzy. Authority over millions of dollars in grants and programs. I don't know how to run a foundation, she whispered. You know how to see people. Thorne's breathing grew more labored. That's all this job requires. The 3 people downstairs in the waiting room, they all failed my test in different ways. The construction worker cursed at me and walked out. The young woman tried to negotiate for a bigger tip before she'd served me. The postal worker was polite but broken, no fight left in him. His eyes softened. But you fought without fighting. You resisted without resistance. You showed me that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you carry inside yourself no matter what anyone does to you. A nurse burst through the door, her face tight with alarm. She checked the monitors, adjusted an IV line. He needs to rest. You need to leave. Wait. Thorne's hand shot out, surprisingly strong, and grabbed Nia's wrist. One more thing. The day I destroyed your father's company, I made a choice. I chose to be hated so he could be free. Every day since I've lived with that choice. People see me as a monster, and maybe they're right. But I want you to remember something. His grip tightened. Sometimes the greatest act of love looks like cruelty from the outside. Sometimes saving someone means becoming their villain. You understand? Nia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thorne released her wrist and sank back into the pillows. Good. Now go. Build something better than I built. Find the steel in other people. Give them the chances I never gave anyone until it was too late. The nurse ushered them toward the door. Nia looked back one last time. Vaughn Thorne lay in that hospital bed, machines beeping their warnings, his eyes already closing. He looked smaller than he had at the diner. More human. More real. "Thank you," Nia whispered. He didn't respond. Maybe he didn't hear her. Maybe he did and just didn't have the strength left to answer. The door closed between them, and Nia never saw him alive again. 6 months later, Nia sat in a small office on the third floor of the Thorne Foundation building. The walls were painted a soft gray. Sunlight streamed through the windows. On her desk, in a simple black frame, sat Thorne's old security badge. A reminder, a warning, a promise. Marcus was healthier now. The treatment had worked better than anyone expected. His hands barely shook anymore. He'd started taking classes at the community college, talking about becoming a counselor, someone who helped people through their darkest moments. The disease hadn't killed him, it had redirected him. Nia's assistant knocked on the door. "Your 2 o'clock is here. Send him in." A young man entered, maybe 30 years old, almost wearing a janitor's uniform with the name Carlos stitched above the pocket. His hands were calloused, his eyes exhausted, his shoulders carrying the weight of a life spent invisible. He sat down across from her, nervous, confused about why he'd been called here. "Do you remember 3 weeks ago?" Nia asked. "At St. Catherine's Hospital? You were cleaning the hallway outside the surgical wing." Carlos nodded slowly. "Yeah, I remember. A surgeon dropped trash on the floor you just mopped. Made you clean it again. Then he did it 2 more times. Just to see if you'd say something." Carlos's jaw tightened. He thought it was funny, thought I wouldn't notice. "But you cleaned it every time. Same care, same attention, like it was the first time." Nia slid an envelope across the desk. "That surgeon was being watched. By me. I needed to see how you handled pressure. How you responded to being disrespected by someone with more power than you." Carlos stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I don't understand." "Open it." His hands shook as he tore it open. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a yellow note. The note read, "I see your steel." Carlos's face crumpled. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he could stop them. "My daughter needs surgery. I've been working 3 jobs, and it's still not enough. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months without it, and I can't—" His voice broke. "I can't lose her." "You won't." Nia's voice stayed steady, strong. "The surgery is covered, fully funded. The check is for everything else. For the bills you've been drowning in. For the life you've been putting on hold. Because you didn't quit when they treated you like you were invisible. You didn't curse them out when they disrespected you. You just kept doing your job with dignity. That's steel, Carlos. And steel deserves to be rewarded." He couldn't speak. Could only sit there clutching the check, his whole body shaking with relief. When he finally left her office 20 minutes later, he kept looking back like he expected someone to tell him it was all a mistake. That people like him didn't get miracles, but they did. They just needed someone to see them first. Nia placed her hand on Thorne's framed badge. The man had lived his entire life as a villain so people like her could survive. He'd tested her with cruelty to teach her about grace. He'd destroyed her father to save him. He'd humiliated her in a diner full of people to prove she had the strength to carry his legacy. The world had judged Vaughn Thorne as a monster. Maybe they were right. Maybe they weren't. Maybe the truth was more complicated than headlines and reputations. Maybe the greatest acts of love did look like cruelty from the outside. Maybe you couldn't understand someone's choices until you walked through the ruins they left behind and saw what they'd been protecting. Nia pulled out her notebook and wrote Carlos's name at the top of a new page. Underneath, she added three more names. People she'd been watching. A checkout clerk at a grocery store who'd been verbally abused by a customer but never lost her composure. A delivery driver who'd walked an elderly woman's groceries up 3 flights of stairs without being asked. A teacher who'd spent his own money on supplies for students whose families couldn't afford them. People with steel. People who bent but didn't break. People who deserved to be seen. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Treatment session done. Feeling good. You free for dinner? She smiled and typed back. Always. Before she left the office that evening, Nia paused at the window. The city spread out below her, millions of people living their lives, carrying their struggles, fighting their battles in silence. How many of them had steel? How many of them were just waiting for someone to see it? She'd spend the rest of her life finding out. The world judges people by what it sees. A $0 tip, a cold demeanor, a harsh reputation. But how often do we look beneath the plate? How often do we consider that the villain in someone's story might be the hero in their survival? How often do we remember that character isn't tested in comfort, but in the crushing weight of impossible choices? Vaughn Thorne taught Nia that steel isn't about never breaking. It's about bending under pressure without losing who you are. It's about maintaining your dignity when the world treats you like you're worthless. It's about serving with grace even when no one's watching, even when it costs you everything. Who in your life have you judged too quickly? Who have you written off as cruel, as cold, as heartless, without knowing the weight they carry? And who might be watching you right now, testing whether you have steel? If this story challenged the way you see people, if it reminded you that the truth is usually hiding beneath the surface, then you belong here. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the complexity of human nature, the power of hidden kindness, and the steel that exists in ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Because the world needs more people looking for steel. It needs more people willing to see past the surface. It needs more people like you. Comment below and tell me, have you ever misjudged someone only to discover later that they were protecting you all along? Or have you been the person carrying a burden in silence, waiting for someone to see past your armor? Share your story. Let's find the steel in each other. God bless you. See you in the next one.